Morning all, and welcome to this bite size on questioning for challenge. It's a slightly longer bite size this morning because we're looking to incorporate all of the different questioning strategies that we've mentioned before within bite size, but just to give you an idea that how we can therefore then use them to increase the level of challenge in the classroom in order to hopefully use some of these strategies to stretch and challenge students at all levels of attainment. So within cold calling, we've got five stages to this. The initial stage is to ask the question. So aim a question out there at everyone in the room and then highlighting that you will choose anyone for a response. Now it might be that you allow them to engage in some think, pair, share here so that they can generate a response with a partner, or it might be that you just give them that silent bit of thinking time. But that is that next stage, to give them time to think. So anything from between 5 and 30 seconds, depending on the complexity of your question. But at this point, scan the room, see who's focusing, see who is engaging as far as you can see. It might be that you can start to listen into some of those conversations if you are using a think, pair, share methodology, just so that you can then have some kind of awareness as to the level of conversations that are happening. After this, then select someone to respond. So use your knowledge of the students to do this, and it might be that you know that some students will automatically give you the right answer or a desired response, or it might be that you are choosing someone because you feel as though they weren't engaged, so you're using your question for a bit of behavior management. It might be that you want to just diffuse the situation a little bit and get across to the idea of, can you describe your thinking to me? That would therefore then, remove the stress of the feelings of having to be correct. From here then, you'll respond. So it might be that we give some affirmations for some correct answers. It might be that we follow up with some probing or some process questions, and we'll look at probing and process questioning in another bite size. But essentially it's that idea of, if they give you the right answer, or if they're getting close to the right answer, can you reward that, but then also follow it up with a harder question that just makes them think that little bit deeper. From here then, we can select other students to respond as well. So either the students will respond to the same question, or they'll respond to an extension of it, and you can continue that stretch around the room. So the idea of asking them, can they add something? Can they build upon a response? Can they offer some challenge with an alternative opinion? Or can they make a decision based on what they've heard? But those ideas will allow you just to grow that thinking around the room. Or you might want the student just to respond to the same question. Now, repeat your response process each time. Make sure you cover a range of students. And then when you feel as though you have enough feedback, it's time to move on and crack on with the next learning episode. So as with any questioning strategy, the first thing to do with probing questions is to ask the question. Now it might be that you use cold calling or you use think, pair, share. Whatever you're going to do, we get them to respond and give a response. Now from that response, we're going to follow up with some probing questions. And the idea with these questions is to take their thinking beyond that initial response. So it's kind of getting the children to elaborate on their initial responses. Now this could be asked to the student who has given that response, or again it could be a way in which we can pass that thinking around the room to increase that depth of dialogue around the room itself. But examples of questions that we might ask might be, what's the connection between A and B? Is that always true, or just in this case? Is there another example that you might be able to give? What are the main reasons? What would be the most important factor? Anything that is allowing them to elaborate on the decisions that they've made and also the knowledge that they have displayed. From here then, we're going to listen and probe further. So we're going to continue to explore their knowledge and understanding. So for example, it could be, what else could you add to explain the variation? Is there another way you can explain it? And then in what ways is it similar or different to a previous example? So again, just encouraging that greater depth of elaboration from the students. Here then, whichever way you've gone about it is your opportunity to then pass it on. So when you've kind of completed maybe 3 or 4 exchanges with a student, or if you've already picked on another student, repeat the process with somebody else. Make sure that you probe what they know, and also then get to a point where you understand the limits of their knowledge. Where have they got up to in terms of expanding their schema around any specific concept? And then finally, we can check for understanding. So we can select other students after an exchange and check what have you understood about another's response. Again, this is a way of just growing the thinking in a room and challenging someone else's thinking about somebody else's response. Ask if they agree. Ask if they disagree. What would they add, build upon, or challenge about the other person's responses? What decisions are we making about then the overall quality of the response that's being given? Essentially, this part of it makes sure that they all listen and that they all engage in the responses being given. The first thing that we need to do when we look at process questions is to make sure that we model our own thinking. So during any instructional phase, it's important that we narrate our thought processes explicitly. So it could include where we draw upon the recall of knowledge, or where we make arbitrary choices, or where we might use trial and error. It might be our explanations of a strategy that should be used as routine, such as how we plan key ideas, or also narrating how we're checking our own ideas or our own answers for accuracy. Whatever we're going through, it's important to show the students the thought processes that we are going through, so that they can then get an insight as to how we are generating our responses as the subject experts. As we go through them, we need to emphasize how and why we know what we know, and why that is the right answer as far as possible. So for example, it's important to show that we know that 7 squared is 49. It's important that we show that as a fact, but actually what we might do is work out 7 cubed as 49 times 7, as opposed to any other different methodology of getting the response to that. And again, making this process explicit to the students so that they understand the how and the why that we are arriving at specific answers. From here then, it's important that we ask students to explain their methods and that they explain their reasoning behind how and why they have also got to an answer. So when a student is given a response, we follow it up with that process question. So for example, thanks Dave, that's correct. What method did you use? Or that's interesting Steve, why did you put them in that order? Or great answer Mary, what assumptions proved to be correct? Again, we're just understanding the thought process and modeling that thought process for everyone in the room. From here then, we will explain, or ask the students, to explain their ideas and their choices. So when they're asked to volunteer ideas or select an option, we ask them to justify them. So it could be, great idea Pam, what made you think of that? Interesting suggestion Alice, why do you think that would work? Something where we're asking them to give that justification behind what they are actually offering as a response. Finally then, we would get to a point where we're asking them, well, how similar problems might be actually approached. So that will reinforce any divergent and evaluative thinking, and it will show us how a range of approaches can actually be valid. So again, as an example, Andy, suggest another way we could explain Macbeth's response, or Charlotte, give us another way to start the sentence to make it more emphatic. So we are using the thought process of others to then create brand new solutions to other problems. So the process, as ever, starts with asking the class a question. So inviting them to think about the lesson content. Again, maybe using cold calling as a strategy, but aiming that question at everyone in the room. And again, if we're using cold calling, highlighting that we'll choose anyone for a response. So when that response comes in, it's about acknowledging that response. It's about being as positive as we can be about the response. If it is completely wrong, it might be, love your effort here, but let's see how we can get it right. Or if it's on the right lines, it might be, yeah, that's okay, it's a good start, but let's now develop it further. Especially if they're on the right lines, but they're just missing some of that key terminology. We're looking here to give, therefore, then some supportive and some formative feedback. So we're going to invite them to be more specific within their response. So words along the lines of, what's the more formal term for that? Or can you include a reason for that opinion to back it up? Aim for, I believe X is true because ... So we're giving that supportive feedback, but also the formative nature of our questions back give the students a scaffold upon which they can grow a better response. From here, then, we are going to invite them to say it again better. So after exploring what that better answer might include, we're going to ask the same student to say it again better. So using the correct terminology, using the key terms, showing that they've understood the key terminology, as well as having another practice opportunity as well. What this also does is it allows the rest of the group, all of the other students, to understand how to apply that key terminology as accurately as possible. Finally, then, we're going to respond to that improved response. So we are going to make a decision. Is it sufficiently improved? So we give some affirmative praise, or are we going to probe and try and get more depth if greater accuracy is needed? I mean, it could be that we repeat the feedback process and ask for a further response. Essentially, though, that the whole process itself will demonstrate that all students are capable of excellent answers, and actually that then builds confidence, it builds familiarity, and it probably builds the chance that they're going to remember exactly what it is that you need them to learn in that lesson. Again, hope that's been helpful. As ever, any questions, please just get in touch, and good luck with it.